nervousness before the call. That entire day, I couldn't focus. I sat at my desk at work, staring at spreadsheets I didn't care about, the invitation tucked in my pocket, burning a hole through the fabric. Every so often, I'd slip it out, read it again, and feel the same pull in my gut. Chosen. The word gnawed at me. I wasn't anyone special. I wasn't rich. I wasn't powerful. I wasn't even particularly happy. I was just ordinary. A cog in a machine, clocking in, clocking out, living life in shades of gray. And maybe that's why the invitation rattled me so much. For once, something extraordinary was aimed at me. But along with the intrigue came fear. Midnight? Alone? Up here? That was the stuff of either a spy thriller or a setup for something far darker. I thought about tossing it in the trash, chalking it up to some elaborate prank. But every time I tried, something stopped me. What if this was the one moment, the one fork in the road, where I was being offered a way out of my dull, monotonous life? The midnight meeting. At 11:47 p.m., I found myself walking down the long, wind-battered stretch of Pier 17. The city behind me glowed with neon and traffic, but out here, it was different. The pier was quiet, the smell of salt heavy in the air, the water black and restless below. I clutched the invitation in my pocket, fingers sweaty against the cardstock. And then I saw them. A group of figures, standing at the very edge of the pier. 5 of them. Dressed in dark coats, their faces mostly obscured by the hoods pulled low over their heads. They didn't speak. They didn't move, except for one, taller than the rest, who stepped forward. "You came," he said. His voice was smooth, commanding, almost musical. I nodded, my throat dry. "You received the seal," he continued, motioning to the envelope I held. "That means you've been noticed." "Noticed for what?" I asked, my voice cracking slightly. The man smiled. It was the kind of smile that held both warmth and menace in equal measure. "For potential." The first test. Before I could ask anything else, he held out a small object, a black cloth blindfold. "Put this on," he instructed. My stomach dropped. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around and leave. But the way the others stood, silent and still, made it clear I wasn't just walking away from a meeting. I was walking away from something bigger. Hands shaking, I tied the blindfold over my eyes. Immediately, the world turned to darkness. I felt a hand on my shoulder, firm and guiding, and then I was being led forward. The sound of footsteps echoed against the wooden planks. The crash of waves grew distant. At some point, we entered a building. I could feel the shift in acoustics, the cold air pressing down on me. And then, silence. The blindfold was pulled away. I stood in a cavernous room lit only by candles. Shadows danced on stone walls. At the center of the room was a round wooden table, its surface carved with that same circle and triangle symbol from the wax seal. The 5 figures now sat around it, their faces still hidden. "Welcome," the tall one said. "To the circle." The offer. What followed was a speech I'll never forget. He spoke of loyalty. Of power. Of access to knowledge not meant for the public. He painted a picture of a hidden brotherhood that operated above the noise of everyday life. They didn't live by society's rules, they made their own. They helped each other rise, protected each other, and punished betrayal with severity. "You've been drifting," he said, his eyes boring into mine. "Living half a life. You feel it, don't you? That gnawing emptiness? That sense that you were meant for more?" And damn him, he was right. He extended his hand across the table. "We can give you more. All we ask is loyalty." The oath. The next hour blurred. I was given a small, leather-bound book filled with symbols and phrases I didn't understand. They asked me to recite a few lines in unison with them. The words felt heavy, strange, like they weren't just sounds but contracts. I repeated them anyway. And when it was over, they each tapped the table once, hard enough that the sound reverberated through the room. "You are one of us now," the leader said. "A brother." A surge of adrenaline rushed through me. I felt chosen. Special. Seen. But beneath that high, a tiny voice whispered, "What have you just agreed to?" The gift. Before leaving, they presented me with a small object, a coin, heavy and metallic, engraved with the circle and triangle symbol. "Carry it always," I was told. "It marks you as one of us. Show it when asked, and doors will open." I clutched it in my hand, feeling its cold weight, believing, for the first time in years, that I belonged somewhere. The walk home. As I left the pier in the early hours of the morning, I couldn't stop replaying everything in my mind. The voices, the symbols, the promise of power. But behind the thrill, another thought gnawed at me. If their power was real, if their network was as vast as they claimed, what would they demand of me in return? Because power is never free. And loyalty, once given to the wrong hands, can be the sharpest weapon used against you. The rituals of trust. The coin never left my pocket. For days after that midnight encounter, I carried it everywhere, clutching it like a lifeline in meetings, fidgeting with it while I rode the subway, tracing the ridges of the engraved circle and triangle whenever the world felt too ordinary. And almost immediately, things started to change. Doors opening. 3 days later, I was standing in line at a crowded coffee shop when a man in a sharp black suit brushed past me. At first, I thought he was just another impatient commuter. But then he stopped, turned, and glanced at my hand, the hand that unconsciously held the coin as I fidgeted. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly. And then, without a word, he waved me ahead of the entire line. The barista, who had been snapping at the customers, smiled at me like I was royalty. I froze. Confused. But when my coffee arrived, it came in a tall black cup with the same symbol, circle and triangle, etched faintly into the sleeve. My heart pounded. They were everywhere. The second meeting. That night, another envelope appeared at my door. Same wax seal. Inside. "You passed the first test. Return tomorrow. Midnight. Bring the coin." This time, my hesitation was less. The pull was stronger. At midnight, I returned to the pier. Again, the hooded figures waited. But this time, they weren't silent. They greeted me by name. Their voices were warmer, less cryptic. The leader, whom I had begun to think of as simply the tall one, smiled as I approached. "You've carried the seal," he said, motioning to the coin. "You've proven trust. Now, you'll learn the circle's lessons." I was ushered into the same candlelit chamber, the same heavy atmosphere thick with wax and smoke. But this time, the air felt almost reverent, like I was about to be shown something forbidden. On the table lay a book. Ancient looking, its leather cover cracked, its pages yellowed. The tall one opened it slowly, reverently, as though even the act of turning a page was sacred. "This," he said, "is the Codex. It contains the principles we live by. Principles not taught in schools, not whispered in churches, not written in laws. These are truths older than nations." He placed the book before me. I leaned closer, scanning the strange diagrams, the cryptic lines written in Latin, Greek, and languages I couldn't recognize. My pulse raced. It was nonsense, and yet, it felt heavy, meaningful. "Knowledge is power," the tall one said softly. "But knowledge without loyalty is a weapon in the wrong hands. That's why we test. The mask of brotherhood." Over the next weeks, I was invited back again and again. Each time, a new ritual. A new lesson. A new way of binding me closer. Sometimes it was symbolic, chanting passages from the Codex, memorizing gestures and responses, reciting pledges in darkened rooms. Other times, it was practical. They gave me tasks, delivering sealed letters to strangers, moving packages I wasn't allowed to open, making calls to people I didn't know, speaking coded phrases that triggered sudden, eerie compliance from those who heard them. Each time I obeyed, their approval grew. They clapped me on the back. They called me brother. They whispered promises of the doors that would soon open for me. And God help me. I craved their approval. For the first time in years, I felt wanted. Needed. Valued. The first crack. But shadows have a way of creeping in, even where candles burn brightest. One night, after a long ritual that left me dizzy from smoke and chanting, I lingered in the chamber while the others filed out. That's when I heard them. Two voices, low and urgent, just beyond the stone archway. Doesn't know yet. He's not ready. Then why bring him in? Because he's useful. He doesn't ask questions. He's desperate. That's the kind we mold easiest. A chill ran through me. My first instinct was to step forward, to reveal myself, to demand answers. But something in me held back. Instead, I stayed silent, heart pounding, until their footsteps faded. When I finally emerged, their faces were calm, smiling, welcoming, as though nothing had been said. But the seed had been planted. The test of silence. A week later, they gave me my first true trial. We were seated in the chamber, the candles burning lower than usual. The tall one slid a folder across the table toward me. Inside is information, he said. It concerns someone who betrayed us. Your task is simple: deliver the folder to the address listed. Hand it directly to the man who answers. Say nothing. Ask nothing. And leave. My fingers trembled as I picked up the folder. It was thick. Heavy. Sealed. Do not open it, he warned. Breaking trust has consequences. The delivery. The address led me to an apartment building on the other side of town. The hallways smelled of dust and stale smoke. My footsteps echoed on the cracked linoleum as I made my way to the door number scrawled on the envelope. I knocked. The door opened a crack. A man's eye peered through. Bloodshot. Nervous. You have it, he whispered. I nodded and handed him the folder. He snatched it away, his hands shaking, and slammed the door without another word. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the peeling paint of the door, my gut twisting. What had I just delivered? The celebration. When I returned to the circle, they were waiting with smiles and applause. They embraced me, clapped my back, called me loyal. You've proven yourself, the tall one said. You can be trusted. But as they celebrated me, the sound of that man's frantic whisper echoed in my head. You have it? What was in that folder? Why did he look so terrified? The hollow triumph. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the coin clutched in my hand. I wanted to believe their approval meant something pure, that I had earned respect, that I had a place in something larger than myself. But behind that glow was a gnawing dread. Because the truth was, I didn't know what I had done. And something in me whispered that, sooner or later, ignorance would no longer be an option. The fracture. The week after the folder delivery, the circle's presence in my life grew heavier, more insistent. They called it strange hours. They slipped notes under my door. They appeared in places I swore I hadn't told them I'd be. It was as if every step I took, every breath I drew, belonged to them. At first, I brushed it off as vigilance. This was their way of reminding me I was chosen, that I was never alone. But slowly, the comfort I'd once felt started curdling into unease. The stranger in the diner. It happened on a Tuesday evening. I was eating alone at a small, greasy diner, the kind where the neon buzzes faintly above your booth. I was half lost in thought when a man slid into the seat across from me. He wore a faded jacket, his eyes darting constantly toward the door. Without a word, he reached into his pocket and pulled out something that made my stomach lurch. A coin. Identical to mine. Circle and triangle engraved in its center. You're new, he muttered, his voice hoarse. I froze. Excuse me? Don't play dumb, he hissed. I can see it in your eyes. The circles got their hooks in you. My pulse thundered. You're one of them? His laugh was bitter, humorless. Was. Until I tried to leave. The warning. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. They don't care about you. They never will. They'll use you until you're dry, then toss you aside like the rest. Do yourself a favor, burn the coin, disappear, and never look back. His hand shook as he slid out of the booth. They don't forgive betrayal. And once they mark you as theirs, there's no clean escape. Before I could ask another question, he was gone, vanished into the night, leaving his untouched coffee steaming in front of me. I sat there, staring at the identical coin he'd flashed, my appetite gone. The whispered conspiracy. That night, I couldn't sleep. His words gnawed at me, wrapping around the doubts I'd tried to bury. And then came the moment that solidified them. During my next gathering with the circle, I slipped away from the ritual chamber after the chants ended. The others stayed behind, their voices carrying faintly through the heavy stone walls. The new one doesn't know. He's still obedient. Good. Keep him busy. He delivers without questions. And when the time comes, then he'll serve his final purpose. My blood ran cold. Serve his final purpose. The words echoed in my skull like a death knell. The forbidden file. The following week, they gave me another folder. Heavier this time. Sealed with wax. Same as before, the tall one instructed. No questions. No words. Deliver and leave. But as soon as I was alone in my apartment, the weight of the folder pressed on me like lead. My hands shook as I turned it over and over. Don't open it, his voice replayed in my head. Breaking trust has consequences. But the warning from the diner echoed louder, they'll use you until you're dry. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Faces I didn't recognize, some candid, some grainy, some taken from angles that screamed surveillance. Names were scrawled beneath each one. Addresses. Dates. Times. And tucked at the very bottom was a single sheet of paper with my own name written across it. I nearly dropped the folder. The panic. For minutes, I just sat there, staring at the sheet, my chest heaving. Why was I in here? Why was I being tracked along with strangers? The doorbell rang suddenly, jolting me so hard I nearly screamed. I shoved the papers back into the folder, snapping it shut, before opening the door. 2 circle members stood there. Hooded. Silent. We'll escort you, one of them said flatly. Escort me where? My mind raced. Did they know? Had they been watching? I handed them the folder with a shaky smile, trying to mask the terror twisting my gut. They didn't speak another word, just nodded and walked away into the shadows. But I knew. They knew I'd looked. The erosion of trust. From that night on, everything changed. The warmth in their voices cooled. Their smiles turned brittle. Their eyes lingered too long, as if searching for cracks in my armor. And worst of all, their requests grew darker. No longer was I delivering sealed envelopes or cryptic messages. Now they asked for information. Addresses of coworkers. Passwords to systems I shouldn't share. Observations about people I barely knew. Each task felt like another string tied around me, pulling tighter, binding me closer to a web I no longer wanted to be part of. But by then, I understood the truth. Saying no was no longer an option. The ritual of shadows. One night, they summoned me to a gathering unlike the others. The chamber was darker than usual, the air thick with incense. The tall one's voice echoed sharply as he spoke. Tonight, you will take the oath of silence. I swallowed hard. Haven't I already pledged? He shook his head slowly. What you've given us so far was merely words. Tonight, you give us proof. From beneath the table, he produced a knife. Its blade gleamed in the candlelight, wicked and sharp. You will cut, he said, sliding the blade across to me. Blood binds stronger than breath. My hand trembled as I picked up the knife. The circle watched silently, their faces obscured by shadow, their eyes glinting like predators waiting to pounce. Every instinct in me screamed to drop it, to to run, to escape. But I forced the blade across my palm, a thin line of fire slicing through my skin. Blood welled up, dripping onto the carved symbol in the center of the table. The circle members leaned forward in unison, pressing their own cut palms to the wood. The tall one's voice thundered in the chamber. Bound by blood. Forever. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss the next. The aftermath. As I stumbled home that night, hand wrapped in a makeshift bandage, I felt sick. Not just from the pain, but from the weight of what had just happened. I wasn't just playing along anymore. I was bound. Marked. And the worst part? I could feel my sense of self slipping. The line between my choices and their commands blurred. I was no longer just obeying them, I was becoming them. But deep down, in the quietest corner of my mind, one thought refused to die. I had to get out. The only question was, would they let me? The fracture. The storm outside had been raging for hours, but it wasn't the rain that unsettled me. It was the silence inside. The silence of men who once called themselves brothers. The silence of eyes that once promised loyalty but now avoided my gaze. I sat at the long oak table, the same one where months ago I had been welcomed with cheers and handshakes. Candles burned at each end, their flames flickering as though they too were nervous about what was about to unfold. Across from me sat Marcus, the man I had once trusted above all others. His jaw was set, his expression unreadable. To his left, the others shifted uneasily in their seats. The Brotherhood had changed. And deep down, I knew so had I. The question no one wanted to ask. Marcus finally broke the silence. "Brother," he began, his voice calm but edged with steel, "we need to know where your loyalty truly lies." The words cut through me like a blade. Loyalty? After everything I had given, everything I had risked. I looked at the faces around the table, searching for a trace of the warmth that once drew me in. All I found were masks, cold, hard, impenetrable. "What are you talking about?" I asked, though my voice trembled despite my best effort to control it. Marcus leaned forward, folding his hands. "We've heard whispers. You've been asking questions. Questions about things that should remain unspoken." My stomach turned. The whispers I had overheard, the secrets I had pieced together, they knew. They always knew. "I just wanted to understand," I replied. "I wanted to know the truth. Isn't that why we're here? Isn't that what this is supposed to be about?" A bitter laugh escaped one of the men to Marcus's right. "The truth? You think the truth is something we hand out like a gift? No. The truth is earned. And you," he jabbed a finger at me, "you haven't earned it." The shift in the room. The tension was suffocating. My chest felt heavy, my heart pounding like a drum. For the first time since I joined, I realized I wasn't one of them. Not really. Marcus's eyes narrowed. "You've been compromised." The words echoed in my head. Compromised. To them, it meant untrustworthy, disposable. I opened my mouth to protest, but before I could speak, two men stood behind me, their shadows stretching long across the table. I froze. "Wait," I said, my voice cracking. "You know me. You know I would never." "Enough," Marcus snapped, slamming his hand on the table. The candles shuddered, wax spilling down their sides. "You've seen too much. You've asked too much. And now you're a risk." The trial. They didn't throw me out, not yet. Instead, they put me through what they called the trial. It was not a ceremony, not a ritual. It was an interrogation dressed in tradition. They blindfolded me and led me down stone steps I had never known existed. The air grew colder, damper. The scent of earth and mildew clung to my nostrils. When the blindfold was finally pulled away, I found myself standing in a chamber lit by a single torch. The walls were lined with old symbols, chalk, paint, even carvings etched deep into the stone. Some were familiar. Others, disturbing. At the center of the room was a chair. A chair that looked less like a seat and more like a restraint. "Sit," Marcus ordered. I obeyed, my legs trembling. They tied my wrists to the arms of the chair, ropes biting into my skin. My breaths came in sharp, shallow bursts. Marcus circled me slowly, like a predator sizing up its prey. "You wanted truth," he said softly, "so here it is. This brotherhood was never about friendship. It was never about loyalty. It was about control. Control over what others fear, over what others cannot know. And you," he leaned close, his lips nearly brushing my ear, "you forgot your place." The revelation. Then he showed me something I'll never forget. He held up a leather-bound book, its cover worn, its edges frayed. He flipped it open to a page filled with names. Names I recognized. Some belonged to men I had seen around the table. Others, I realized with a jolt, were people outside. People who had vanished. "What is this?" I whispered, my voice shaking. Marcus smiled faintly. "A record. Every name here is someone who gave too much, or knew too much. They were given a choice, loyalty or silence. And those who chose silence?" I asked, though dread was already curling in my stomach. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't have to. The names themselves were an answer. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a society. It was a trap. The choice. Marcus closed the book with a snap and stood in front of me. "Now, brother, it's your turn. Will you pledge yourself, fully, without hesitation, or will your name be written here?" The room spun. I wanted to scream, to run, to fight. But the ropes held me tight, and the eyes of the others bore into me like daggers. I thought of the nights I spent with them, the laughter, the feeling of belonging. All of it was a lie. A performance designed to keep me compliant. "I won't do it," I whispered, though my voice shook with fear. "I won't give myself to this." Marcus's smile faded. His eyes hardened. "Then you've chosen silence. The escape." The ropes were loosened, not as mercy, but as a sentence. Two men seized me by the arms and dragged me back up the stone steps. I stumbled, my legs barely holding me. The others followed close behind, silent as ghosts. We emerged into the stormy night. The rain hammered down, washing over my face, mixing with the sweat and fear clinging to me. They led me to the edge of the woods, their grip unyielding. Marcus stopped just short of the tree line. "This is the last time you'll see us," he said, his voice eerily calm. "Run, if you like. But remember, our reach is long. And once you've seen the inside, there's no escaping it." He released me. The others stepped back. For a moment, I just stood there, drenched, trembling, staring into the black mouth of the forest. Then instinct took over. I ran. Branches clawed at my arms, mud sucked at my shoes, but I didn't stop. Not once did I dare to look back. The storm swallowed me whole, and still I ran, lungs burning, heart pounding. The haunting truth. By dawn, I found myself miles away, collapsed against the trunk of a fallen tree. My body ached, my clothes were soaked through, and my mind was shattered. But one thought pierced through the haze: I was alive. For now. And yet, as the sun rose, I knew Marcus's words were true. Their reach was long. Their eyes were everywhere. Even now, even in the quiet of the morning, I felt them watching. The Brotherhood wasn't just a group of men in a candlelit room. It was an idea, a shadow that stretched across every corner of my life. And though I had escaped their chamber, I hadn't escaped them. Not really. The trial had changed everything. I wasn't a brother anymore. I wasn't even an enemy. I was prey. And the hunt had just begun. The reckoning. The forest should have been a place of safety. Birds singing, branches swaying, sunlight breaking through the canopy. But that morning, every sound felt sinister. Every shadow twisted into something unnatural. I told myself I had escaped, but deep down I knew the truth: no one escapes the Brotherhood. I stumbled along a muddy trail, exhaustion dragging at my body. My mind replayed Marcus's words again and again, "Our reach is long. Once you've seen the inside, there's no escaping it." I wanted to believe he was bluffing. That they had let me go, that they would forget me. But the Brotherhood doesn't forget. And I wasn't meant to survive. If you are here with me, hit the subscribe button. The watching eyes. For 3 days, I wandered, moving from one small town to the next. I stayed in cheap motels, paid in cash, kept to myself. But no matter where I went, I felt it, the eyes. In the diner, the man at the counter who stared too long. At the gas station, the woman who smiled strangely as I paid. Even at night, when I thought I was finally alone, I would wake to the sound of footsteps fading just beyond my door. They were watching. Always watching. The letter. On the 4th morning, I found an envelope slipped under my motel room door. No name, no address. Just a single symbol drawn in black ink, the same symbol I had seen carved into the stone walls of their chamber. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a short note. "Your silence is temporary. Come back and pledge, or your name will be written in the book." There was no signature. There didn't need to be. I burned the letter in the motel sink, watching the flames curl the paper into ash. But burning it didn't erase the dread that had taken root in me. It only grew stronger. The visit. That night, I dreamed of Marcus. He stood at the foot of my bed, his expression cold, his voice calm. "You've made your choice," he whispered. "Now we'll make ours." I jolted awake, drenched in sweat. My heart thundered in my chest. It was just a dream, I told myself. Just a dream. But when I reached for the lamp, I saw something on the nightstand that hadn't been there before. A candle. Half-burned. The same kind we had used during the meetings. Someone had been in my room. The descent. Fear consumed me. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. Every corner of every room became a hiding place for shadows. Every stranger's face held menace. I tried to go to the police, but what could I say? That a secret society was following me? That they left me candles and notes? The officer who took my report nodded politely, scribbled something on a pad, and handed me a card for a therapist. I left the station more alone than ever. The return. It was a week later when I realized the truth. I couldn't outrun them. No matter where I went, no matter how carefully I hid, they would always find me. There was only one choice left. I had to face them. I returned to the town where it all began. The storm had passed, but the memories lingered like scars. My feet carried me back to the old house in the woods, the one where the Brotherhood had first welcomed me. The door creaked open before I could knock. They had been waiting. The final gathering. Inside, the air was thick with candle smoke. The long oak table was set once more, the same as before, though the faces around it seemed even colder now. Marcus sat at the head, his eyes locking onto mine the moment I entered. "You came back," he said softly. "I had no choice," I replied, my voice hollow. He smiled faintly. "There's always a choice. You simply made the right one." I stepped forward, my legs trembling. "I won't pledge," I said firmly. "But if you're going to end me, then do it. Stop playing these games." The room fell silent. Then, slowly, Marcus rose to his feet. "You still don't understand, do you?" he said. "This was never about you pledging. It was about seeing how far you'd go before you broke." He gestured, and one of the men brought forward the leather-bound book. The Book of Names. Marcus flipped it open, scanning the pages. Then he turned it around and showed me. There it was. My name. Already written. The breaking point. My knees buckled. The room spun. "You said," I stammered. "You said I had a choice." Marcus's smile was cruel. "You did. And you chose silence. Now, your name belongs here." The others began to chant softly, a low, rhythmic hum that vibrated through the floor. My head pounded. My chest tightened. I wanted to run, to scream, to fight. But I couldn't move. I was frozen in place, trapped by fear, or maybe by something deeper, something I couldn't name. The twist. And then, something strange happened. Marcus closed the book and stepped closer. His expression softened, not with kindness, but with something else. "Do you know why we brought you in?" he asked quietly. I shook my head. "Because you're not like the others. You question. You doubt. You search for truth." He leaned so close I could feel his breath on my cheek. "That makes you dangerous. But it also makes you valuable." He placed a hand on my shoulder. The real test was never about loyalty. It was about breaking you down, so we could build you up again. My stomach churned. The betrayal was complete. They hadn't just used me. They had studied me. Shaped me. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. Part of me wanted to give in. The choice that never was. They offered me a seat. My own chair at the table. My own candle. "Join us," Marcus whispered. "Not as a pawn. Not as prey. But as one of us." I looked around the room. The faces that once seemed cold now looked expectant. Hungry. Was this what I wanted all along? To belong? To be accepted? My heart screamed no. But my body, tired, broken, afraid, hesitated. And in that hesitation, I knew they had already won. The ending. I don't remember leaving the house. I don't remember how I got back to the motel. What I do remember is waking up the next morning with a candle on the nightstand, unlit, but waiting. And I remember the book. The leather-bound book with my name already written inside. No matter what I chose, no matter where I ran, I was theirs now. Forever. So if you ever find yourself approached by a group that promises loyalty, power, and secrecy, remember this. They're not offering you freedom. They're not offering you friendship. They're offering you chains. And once you've seen the inside, once your name is written down, there's no way out. Remember to subscribe to this channel, like and share to make people stay aware.